recorded and behave accordingly. So Boker Tov and Chodesh Tov, and to those who are joining from Israel, Tzoraim Tovim, good afternoon, good morning, and may it be a good month, a better month. The last 11 months have taught us that there really is no upper limit to the pain that a human being can experience. And I think that the sadness and rage that many of us share, particularly after the murder of our hostages, came to light this past weekend, has been just overwhelming. So I affirm what the great Hasidic master, the Kotzker Rebbe, once said, "In shalem kalev shavor," which means there is nothing as whole as a broken heart. So what I know is that the broken-heartedness of our community is also a source of our strength and solidarity. The fact that we know that we're all in this together, I hope will bring a chatzi nechama, what the tradition calls a half measure of comfort, since there really is no real comfort to be felt right now. In times of distress, Jewish people turn to words. We are people who find incredible meaning, power, beauty, and strength in our literary tradition, in our tradition of human expression through the written and spoken word. And that's in part what connects us this morning as well. So the opening words that I'd like to share are a simple traditional blessing for the new moon, which rose in the sky last night. If you didn't see it, that's because that's how new moons work. You don't see them. But they hold possibility of change. And particularly the new moon of Elul is here to introduce a month of introspection and returning to our most noble selves, returning to the relationships that sustain us that might have endured some wear and tear over the past year or worse, and to return with a spirit of hope that the next year might be better. Please God. And so I'll offer this prayer for today, which is Rosh Chodesh Elul. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, shetichadesh aleinu et hachodesh hazeh letova uvelivracha, v'titen lanu chayim arukim, chayim shel shalom, chayim shel parnasa, chayim shetehevanu ahavat Torah v'yirat shamayim, chayim sheyimal'u mish'alot libeinu letova. Amen. Eternal God and God of our ancestors, we pray that the new month will be a month of goodness and blessing. We ask for long life, peace, prosperity, a life exalted by our love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts are fulfilled for good. And we add a life of shalom, of peace. Rosh Chodesh Elul hu hayom. The new month of Elul begins today. Welcome to you, and I still anticipate that people are going to be straggling in because of the technical difficulty. A small group is not a lesser group, and we are recording this session as well, so that we can share with our kihila. We join once again my friend and somebody I consider to be my teacher, Dr. Rachel Korazim, who is with us from Israel, to share with us poetry for this time of year that has been composed in Israel since October 7th. And this is the second such session, so we're looking at texts that are different from the ones last time, but these are now presently being anthologized. And Rachel, at some point this morning, maybe now, will share a word about the anthology that will be available as well. So I'm going to remain here in the background and offer my own Rashi commentary as my heart moves.
I expect nothing less.
Right. No, Rachel knows that I'm a fellow lover of poetry, and that it was really my first calling. What the congregation may not know is that I actually wrote my undergraduate thesis on Sefer Tehillim, the Bible's book of Psalms, but I examined them from the critical lens of classical poetry. So I am, I've been into reading traditional text as literature. And this is kind of the inverse. This is reading poetry as classical text or as prayer. Like in my view, prayer is not just the words that the rabbis wrote down 2,000 years ago and more. Prayer can actually be made out of any words that emerge from a place of longing for the holy and help us connect to one another and indeed beyond one another. So, my friend Rachel, this is your session. Thank you
Okay,
for joining
thank you,
us.
Jonathan. Thank you, Rabbi Blake. And I want you to know that you are very unique among all the many rabbis of congregations that I offer classes to that is so actively involved. And I oftentimes ask the participating rabbis, do you want to be involved in the choice of the poems? So, no, 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 I leave it to you. And I know that if I will ask you, there'll be an answer and there'll be a choice, and you will be looking at the choices I'm offering you, and you are the only one out of very many, and I welcome that. So
Well, thank you,
shalom.
because some people find that I'm a pain in the ass to work with because of that, but that's okay.
I enjoy it, maybe because I'm a pain in the ass myself. Anyway, so the poetry that is being written in Israel since October 7th brings us into a type of conversation about literature that, at least for me, myself, who has been a teacher of poetry for many, many years, is very, very different. And let me explain why. For that, I will pull on the screen now my PowerPoint presentation, and I hope that it works well for you. And can you see it, Rabbi, in the presentation mode?
Yes, I
Okay.
can. Yep, I think we all
So,
can.
you can see here that they are poems for our days number 3. It's just that I'm offering different choices. And you can see names of poets: Michael Zatz, Rachel Sharansky Danziger, Osnat Eldar, Yael Lifshitz, Elchanan Nir. And I like to bet that even you, Rabbi, are not familiar with all these names. Because
Nachon.
when we discuss contemporary Israeli poetry, so okay, Amichai immediately comes to mind, and we will remember the older ones, your Leah Goldbergs and Rachels and Yona Volachs, etc. But who ever heard about Michael Zatz, and who heard about Osnat Eldar? These are totally unfamiliar names for most of us, myself included. This is the reason why I put their pictures on the screen, for a reason. Normally, when you teach literature, like, the face of the poet is not a very important element of your teaching, right? And some of you are teachers in this class. Why do I do that? Exactly because of that change in the way I need to address my learning and teaching. I know how to prepare literature classes. I know how to find the books of poetry either on my shelf or in the library or in the bookstore or digitally. I know where to look for the learned articles and the PhD dissertations that have been written about them, etc. But none of that is available to me these days. I'm talking about poetry that I had found in the digital world, starting the earliest was on October 10th, like 3 days into the shock. And I keep collecting since. And oh, how I wish I could, in my other teaching, pick up the phone or send an email to Leah Goldberg, but I cannot. She died in 1970. But these chevra, look at their faces. They are all young and alive and accessible. You drop them a note on Facebook, you send them an email, and they respond. And they enter into conversation, and they help you with the translation, and they will occasionally join your classes. So every single one of the people actually on the screen, I have met at least on Zoom. One I have met personally, that's Osnat Eldar. We will study some of her, one of her poem at least. So this is now a totally different experience. Even I have to watch my language. You know, Jonathan, when you speak of an literary phenomenon, and you will use the term, so the early poets, they did this and that, and then the latter ones, they did the other. And by early, you mean the Middle Ages or the Renaissance or the beginning of the 20th century where it comes to Bialik. And by later, you mean your Amichais, etc. When I say early in these classes, I mean October, November, And when I say late, I mean July, August. This is a totally different span of time. This is a totally different way of entering into conversation with text when you can literally enter into conversation with the poet. Something new in our lives. By the way, you should think about it, Jonathan, and maybe offer your community the opportunity to meet with one or more of these poets, either personally or through Zoom.
I'd love that.
Since October 10th, which is when I started collecting, did I know how long it will last? No way. Did I know how many classes I will be able to teach? No way. But it kept accumulating, and the war keeps going on, and it's not stopping, and it's still there. Sometimes around Pesach, and Jonathan, it was your friend Jeff who suggested it in a session that he invited me to. He said, Rachel, you know, I could find you a publisher that may be interested in doing an anthology. He found one, and that person did not follow through. But we did, a group of people, the two translators, Michael Bonin and Heather Silverman. You can see their names on the cover page of the anthology. And as of a week ago, we have a bilingual collection of poems, 59 out of well over 120 that we have chosen and translated. We gave the collection the title Shiva for the double meaning. Shiva means seven, but this is an invitation for all non-Hebrew speakers to consider the following. When you in America speak about the date of our disaster and tragedy, you will say the 7th of October. But when we speak about it, we say Hashiv'ah be'October. Every single time we do nothing but relating to the date, we already say Shiva, Shiva, Shiva. So in our mind and the way we speak about it, we are constantly referring to the morning as if the Shiva for October 7th has not yet ended. And indeed it haven't. And the Goldberg Pauline family just started their Shiva, you know. And who knows who is next and who we are visiting. This anthology is not accessible to you. You can see the address on Amazon. And if you are interested, you or other congregants, in buying a bulk, I can give you the email of the publishers. This is a Jewish publication house, and they will arrange for you to get it for less than Amazon charges, and I think it's a good text to have. And if you don't believe me, consult with your friend Jeff, and he will tell you how he feels about it. And now to our poetry. So look at the lovely pictures of these people. I hope we will address most of them or quite a few. And I want you to look at the top right-hand side of corner where is Michael Zatz. Michael is the only one of all these poets whom I knew before. I knew him from my regular classes of teaching contemporary Israeli poetry because Michael came to Israel as a child immigrant, and a lot of his poetry refers to the experience of being a child immigrant. He came from the Soviet Union. His name, which he hates the Russian way they pronounce it, because like every child of immigrants, he wants to out Israeli every Israeli. So he likes to be called Michael and not Misha, as his mother calls him. It irritates him, and he will speak about it frankly, even in his poetry. Michael is the only one I knew ahead of time. So when I started trying to put together, it was easy for me to find his poetry for a very simple technical fact. We are Facebook friends. So I could see his poetry. I belong to a WhatsApp group, all in Hebrew, by the way, where he just sends new poems every other day. And so Michael was the natural way for me to go. Also, entering a conversation about contemporary Israeli poetry through Michael's poetry is sort of a soft entry, like going le'at le'at, slowly, before we hit the truly heavy stuff. It's not less heartbreaking. but it's somehow manages to sort of caress you as it goes. So let me take you to the first poem. The first two are very short and they are both by Michael Zatz. So I put in the center this graphic art of the word Shiva be'October, and you can see how it uses Siddur-like font for the word Shiva to indicate both the date and the notion of mourning, Shiva. You can look at the names of the translators, Michael Bonin, Heather Silverman, and myself. We work together. I do first a raw translation of what the poem says, and then Michael and Heather make poetry in English out of it, which is a very good combination. Let us first listen to the Hebrew and then go to the English and talk about it. מאז אותה שבת שחורה תמיד תניחו שגם עם עיניים עצומות אינני ישן. גם על חלומות אל תשאלו אותי, אני חומק מסיוטים כמו מכדורים. Ever since that black Shabbat, always assume that even if my eyes are closed, I'm not asleep. Do not ask me about dreams either. I avoid nightmares as though they were bullets. Take this very slowly. Michael writes close to the haiku tradition, you know, few words, one metaphor, one image. So the metaphor in front of our eyes is the poet or the poet figure in the poem who is lying there with his eyes closed. A very normal, natural stuff to do, which will immediately evoke the appropriate behavior. Assume the man is asleep. Be quiet. Tiptoe out. Don't wake him. And Michael is now suggesting a new reality. No, no, no. Old assumptions don't work anymore. I now want to give you instructions about how to deal with me since that black Shabbat. No date, no number, no Shiva, just a metaphor. There is now sort of a fence, a borderline in time. There is stuff before that black Shabbat, and there is totally different stuff afterwards. So ever since then, I'm giving you now new instructions how to deal with me. Never assume I'm asleep, even if it seems to you that I am. The truth is that Michael is right. We are all sleep deprived constantly in the last 11 months. And you wake up, you know, and you don't want to believe the reality you wake up to, and I will say a word about that. Just in case you think that I'm still normal and want to hold a conversation with me about dreams as people would occasionally, here is my second instruction to you. Do not ask me about dreams either. I avoid nightmares as though they were bullets. It's not just sleep deprivation, it's being afraid to fall asleep because nightmares come, and it will bring you totally, if you remember, to the Viktor Frankl world, where he relates in his book Man's Search for Meaning an experience from Auschwitz when next to him was another inmate and he could see that that person was having a nightmare at night, and he's very naturally raised his hand trying to wake that person to tell him it's only a nightmare, wake up. And then he stops and says, no, what was I doing? The reality I was about to bring him back to is much worse than anything he could dream about. Let him have his nightmare. Auschwitz is worse. So not making a strict comparison between the two. That's not my intention. But treating a new reality as a watershed event that implies new understandings, new behaviors, new expectations from fellow men and women. Don't talk to me about dreams. I'm afraid of them. I cannot maybe speak about them. consider and understand that even if I close my eyes, I'm still sleep deprived. So a new state of mind. And if you are willing, I'd like you to look at the two Michael poems, one next to the other, and then open it to conversation. And as we go to the second one, which I think is growing to be my favorite one, because I'm very much a person of language, so you will understand that. You can see, by the way, that I did not type this out in regular, fonts as one would, but I took a screenshot of Michael's Facebook page where he put this on, so you can see his handwriting and the way he put the title on the side. We are reading the Ivrit first. שפה חדשה. זה שוב מרגיש כמו שהייתי ילד עולה. אני עושה פני מבין, מהנהן להסכמה, מנדרוש לשלילה, אבל כולם מסביבי מדברים שפה אחרת שאני שוב לומד מחדש, עברית של אחרי השביעי באוקטובר. Once again, I feel like an immigrant child, pretending that I understand, nodding in agreement, shaking my head in disagreement, but everyone around me is speaking another language, one that I relearn anew after October 7th Hebrew. Look at the beautiful work of translation, even rhyming, one that I learn anew after October 7th Hebrew. If you met in the earlier poem an adult person that is sleep deprived and afraid of falling asleep, of nightmares, you can connect very easily to the child inside who remembers the frustrations of the early days in the new country, not being able to connect, not being able to understand. And I did it. I grew up, Michael now is a father of 3 kids. He's a very successful lawyer. He works for a large Israeli NGO that deals with people on the autistic spectrum, in a very important job. He made it. And now is October 7th, as if the carpet is pulled from underneath his feet anew, and he is losing it. We are all in that new country, the language of which we fail to understand or pretend we understand after October 7th Hebrew. For Hebrew mavens among you, I want to draw your attention to the way Michael marks the date. Grammatically, it is more correct to say Shiv'a be'October, and he chooses Hashvi'i be'October, which grammatically may be considered wrong, yet it brings you back to the first poem, Me'az Ota Shabbat. Hashvi'i is Shabbat, Uvayom Hashvi'i. So there are subtle connections between the two. This issue of child afraid of dreams, child not being able to reconnect, the adult whose world seemingly okay is now shattered, is now not there as it used to be. Let me stop here for a moment, which allows me to admit the guest and also step out of my PowerPoint and invite comments or questions about these two short, yet to me, a very good entrance into our conversation today. Bevakasha.
I'll begin because
Sure.
I promised I would. I just want to relate in a personal way to the second of these poems. I feel both of these poems deeply. They give words to some of the things that I've been feeling that sometimes I say I don't have the words. So thank you, Rachel, and thank you to Michael Satz. In particular, the idea of speaking a new language, the way an immigrant does, which is just it's such a hard feeling. It's so frustrating to try to communicate and recognize that others either don't understand you and you don't understand them. We've all been there, I'm sure, in one context or another, but I will tell you, I feel this every week since October 7th, particularly when I am speaking with, about, or hear from people who lack any, and I'm not even talking about, like, the moral clarity to know good from evil, which is part of it, but there's so many people out there who, when they talk about the conflict, are speaking about it in a language that is completely foreign to me. And when I hear terms brought up that this is a conflict about, the genocide of the Palestinians or apartheid, these words, not only do they wound, I find them bewildering because they're not at all the language with which I am framing what's been happening on or since October 7th. So,
While at the same time you can oppose the occupation.
Vadai, of course. Uh,
Okay.
but even then, when they talk about occupation, I mean, I think when somebody says from the river to the sea, for them, they mean Tel Aviv is occupied. And
Hmm.
so for me, that's really a lot of what I'm struggling with as a communicator myself, is that I'm not speaking the same language as others who oppose this war. So just at a very macro level, for me, it's not just personal, and it's more than just political. It's part of my whole calling right now is to help communicate about what's happening and what it means. And I find that we're in a world that it's like the aftermath of the Tower of Babel.
Hmm.
Lots of people yelling and very few people speaking the same language.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I will be sure to tell Michael about it because we practically email every day these days, as he's going to be one of the poets in the first launching at Hartman, and he's going to open the event. So we are fine-tuning what he is doing. So I will share with him that. Anybody else on these two poems, New Language and Evet, since that Black Shabbat? So if not, can we continue, do you think, Jonathan?
I do.
Okay, so why don't we? Let's just do that. Let me put my screen back on and share with you the next poem, which is now we are moving into slightly longer, slightly sometimes more complex. So, here's a poem by a poet called Rachel Sharansky Danziger or Rachel Sharansky Danziger. And to some of you, the name Sharansky may ring a bell and may sound familiar. So, if that is the case for some of you, yes, indeed, she is the daughter of Sharansky. She is an educator and a teacher and a colleague at Pardes, where I occasionally teach. And this is again one of those early ones. So I'm talking probably early November, 3 weeks into it. I find this poem Rachel is a friend since the time we worked together at Pardes. And I see this on her Facebook page in Hebrew. And I call her every single time. I will contact people to ask their permission to translate, to include in my classes. And I talked to her about the poem on her Facebook page. And she says, "What poem are you talking about, Rachel?" And I said, "The one you posted this morning." She said, "It wasn't a poem, it was just a Facebook post." So this is an opening that I oftentimes seek in order to explain to people that the poets we are dealing with these days, although poets by any standard, rarely think of themselves as poets. They all have day jobs, they do other things, and they also write, and some of that is poetry. So we will go through this poem together, of course, again, the same methodology, Hebrew first, English next, and then before we are done, you will tell me if this is a poem or not. ביום, רחל שרנסקי דנציגר. ביום אפשר לאפות עוגיות לנשות המילואימניקית. ביום אפשר לשלוח הודעות מחזקות לחברים. ביום אפשר לנחם אבלים, ביום אפשר להשקיע בחיים. אבל בשעות הלילה אין איך להשתיק את המתים. אני שוכבת וליבי ער ודוהר, רודף אחרי שברי סיפורים שסופם כבר ידוע, והכל, הכל מרגיש פצוע, פגוע, ואיך אפשר לישון ואיך אפשר לשקוט, כשאיבדנו לנצח יותר מ1,000 לבבות. During the day. By day, one can bake cookies for the wives of the reservists. By day, one can send strengthening messages to friends. By day, one can comfort mourners. By day, one can invest in life. But at night, there is no way to silence the dead. I lie down and my heart is awake and galloping, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known. And everything hurts and feels wounded, injured, damaged. And how can one sleep and how can one be tranquil when we have lost for all eternity more than 1,000 hearts? I'd like to take you in very slowly, and first by suggesting that you look carefully at the fact that during the day the title switches to by day as we go into the poem. This is a pedagogical tool for me to remember to tell you the following. When first Michael and Heather and myself, of course, did the translation, we went with during the day one can bake cookies, during the day one can send strengthening, etc. And then I was teaching it in one of the many occasions that I did, and I called my audience to pay attention how much is lost in translation when the Hebrew has this knocking feeling, bayom, 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 which is not translated by during the day. And Heather, who was present in that class, said, Rachel, but you can change it into by day, and that it will echo the Hebrew bayom, by day, by day, by day. And you can get the sense of the frantic activities which all of us are involved with relentlessly. We try to do and to go and to bake and to make sandwiches and to pack and to raise funds and to help and to host and to visit and mourners visit all the time. Keep ourselves busy, thinking less, because you cannot stop thinking. And then comes that separation line, which is part of the creation. The separation between day and night is the beginning of Genesis. And here a new reality is being born, a new separation between day and night. Day is for frantic activity, but at night, there is no way to silence the dead. Oi. Like, she, of course, is BSing us. Listen carefully to what she says. One of the major qualities of the dead is that they are silent. There is no need to silence the dead. They have been silenced already by bullets or explosion of fire. But in our mind, everything in the first verse is outside, external. As we move into the night, we move inside our mind. And inside our mind, the dead have voices. And they need to be silenced, and there is no way to do it. I lie down and my heart is awake. Oy vavoy, oy vavoy. Can you see the clear allusion to the quote from the Song of Songs? אני ישנה וליבי ער, כל דודי דופק פתחי לי אחותי. I was asleep, but my heart was wakeful. Now, whether you take the Song of Songs to be the most erotic work of art ever written in the Hebrew language, or you want to consider it the way the rabbis have suggested, that it's a metaphor to the love and connectedness between God and the people of Israel, is immaterial. What is important here is the imagery that you lie at night wakeful or even if you are asleep, as if you were wakeful, because your heart is there and you are expecting the connectedness, the love, the need to open up to the lover. Pitchili, open up. I lie down and my heart is awake, awake and galloping. Is not at all the same experience. Physically, I'm experiencing that, but my heart is galloping for another reason, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known. You know what that means? It's the endless being unable to stop listening to the media, the radio, the television, whatever thing you're listening to on your internet and your cell phone, and they keep interviewing the people and how we were together, and then they came and then they separated us, and they don't know what happened to him, or I do know what happened to her. And you have already heard that story twice today, and you know at how it will end, and you know it's much better for you not to listen once more, and you cannot stop because that's the only thing you can do. Listen, hold, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known, and everything hurts and feels wounded, injured, damaged, because you cannot sleep and you cannot find solace in your heart when we have lost all those hearts. There is your own heart that cannot find its own tranquility and rest and silence because of the loss of all the other hearts. But Rachel is doing something to me even additionally interesting at what we have lost. And everything. Look at the Hebrew and follow me. Hakol, hakol, hakol. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. Something had touched, maybe broken, even our ability to pray. Even our ability, because this is a poem in conversation with the greatest love poem, the Song and Songs. And she's using the tools of the Ahavta in order to show the break, in order to show what happens at night, which is all shattered fragments of a reality that is no more. Let's stop on this, if you will.
I'll point out one thing that strikes me, and thank you.
Shall I put the poem back, or you would rather have
No,
that?
you don't actually need it. It's derived more from the experience of hearing you read it in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think the English is lovely, but who was it that famously said that reading in translation is like kissing a woman through a veil?
Either Bialik or Shlonsky, we are not sure, but then he added, it's not so bad, let me tell you.
I love that. I didn't know that coda. But hearing it in Hebrew is of course what the author has in mind when she writes.
Mhm.
And this is a great poem. If I were teaching just poetry, I would bring this poem in to talk about meter,
Mm-hmm.
and rhythm, and even the way the second stanza ta put there's a kind of orderliness um, to the first stanza. As if
Bayom,
you're saying, you know,
yeah.
right, we're taking a day and we have our schedules, we have our
Mm-hmm.
list of things to do, and that's how we make order out of time. But then at night, when we lose control of that, the meter of the poem, the rhythm in the language echoes the sound of a palpitating heart. To me, that's what I
And lack of order and lack of structure.
that's right. And yeah, it's jumbled, it's jagged.
And it starts with that total contradiction that you cannot silence the dead when somebody already silenced them.
And anyone who has struggled with insomnia, whether it was prompted by October 7th or it's just something you live with, knows this feeling, just knows how out of order it is.
Mm-hmm.
When your thoughts are racing and your heart is palpitating and you can't breathe the way we're supposed to. Anyway, that's
We
what.
also do all the wrong things for you to do,
Hmm? And
like
this is just
listen.
one of the things, just as a lover of poetry, that I like sharing with people when I'm learning poetry with them, which is that the meaning is found not only in the literal
In the
sense of
world.
words, not only in the metaphors and images, but the way in which poetry is music without notes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so just for the sake, if people want to listen it, why don't we read it again in Ivrit so we can hear what Rabbi meant? ביום אפשר לאפות עוגיות לנשות המילואימניקים, ביום אפשר לשלוח הודעות מחזקות לחברים, ביום אפשר לנחם אבלים, ביום אפשר להשקיע בחיים, אבל בשעות הלילה אין איך להשתיק את המתים. אני שוכבת וליבי ער, ער ודוהר, רודף אחרי שברי סיפורים שסופם כבר ידוע, והכל, הכל, הכל מרגיש פצוע, פגוע. ואיך אפשר לישון, ואיך אפשר לשקוט, כשאיבדנו לנצח יותר מ1,000 לבבות. And we are continuing with a poem called Mothers by my friend Osnat Eldar. So just in case you need to know that, and I think you do, I'm saying this in particular to you, Rabbi. Osnat Eldar is a rabbi. That's good to hold in mind when we read this poem. It is longer and it is spread on 2 slides, so we'll do one at a time. בלילות הן מתאספות אחת אחת. זו שביתה נחטפה או תנודתה בגואלת בדם לא נותנת מנוח. זו שבנה נפל בקרב. זו שילדיה יישארו לעד בממד הקטן בפאתי הבית בקיבוץ. זו שנשארה דמומה בצד השני של הקו חורטת בגופה את הזוועות. מדי פעם היא לחשה לא עולה, אני אוהבת אותך, אני איתך, אני כאן, הלו. זו שלא הספיקה להיפרד, זו שאוחזת בשבריר של סרטון המראה שהוא חי, זו שהתעוררה בשבת וידיעת המוות נבטה בתוכה. Mothers. They are gathering at night one by one. She whose daughter was abducted and her blood-stained picture doesn't allow her any peace. She whose son fell in battle. She whose children will remain forever in the little safe room in the corner of the house on the kibbutz. She who remained mute on the other end of the line, scratching the horrors onto her skin. She who whispered from time to time to him or to her, I love you, I'm with you, I'm here, hello. She who wasn't able to say goodbye. She who is holding onto the fragment of a film clip showing him alive. She who woke up on Shabbat with the knowledge of death germinating within her. So think about now as we are talking about mothers, the 4 matriarchs, or maybe including the other women Jacob had. But now Osnat is suggesting to us it's time to rewrite our story. There are new mothers. They are not named yet, but they are gathering at night. You know which one she means, whose daughter was abducted and her blood-stained. Yes, you have seen the blood-stained pictures. She whose son fell in battle. She whose children remain forever in the little safe, what safe room? What was safe in that room in the corner of the house in the kibbutz, and she wasn't there to be with them? Who she remained mute on the other end of the line because you were afraid to talk to them lest somebody will hear, just texting, scratching the horrors into her skin, trying to reach out. And what can you do? I love you, I'm with you, I'm here. And then nothing. She wasn't able to say goodbye. She is holding to a fragment of a film clip showing him alive. How relevant. We just heard about Hirsch and the others. They were films, they were alive. It sustained hope. She who woke up on Shabbat with the knowledge of death germinating within her. There are people like that who will know when stuff is about to transpire, to happen. בלילות בחדרי החשוך הן נודדות במעגלים, שמוטות כתפיים חסרות מנוחה, תרופות שינה, אימהות. I'm going to switch to the English for the sake of time. At night in my darkened room they are wandering in circles, droops, holders, restless, sleep crazed. Mothers, if only they could change places with the boy or the girl ready for captivity or death. Mothers, not yet used to wandering, they come to me at night one by one. I'm hugging them with compassion, with longing, absorbing into my body the feeling of guilt, the helplessness, the abyss, and caressing silently their new maternal title imposed on them, and silence now instead of that horrible word, bereaved mother, imahot shakulot. And what I'm inviting you to do, if you will, is, Jonathan, if you can place yourself in front or in conversation with your colleague, Rabbi Osdat Eldar, who is now looking at her new congregants, because this is what's happening. Beyond the losses, you may want now to raise your head and think about rabbi colleagues whose congregations now look like this.
I can't wait to be introduced to her, first of all. And I might reach out. I'm going to be in Israel in November.
We
Is
have a
she?
small community in Zichron Yaakov.
I'd love to be introduced. I mean, some of the most sustaining conversations I've had over the last year have been with my Reform rabbinical colleagues.
She's a
And
Reform rabbi.
yeah, I think she was ordained from HUC a few years ago. So I haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting her, but thank you for the introduction. And if you have a contact to share with me
Of
privately,
course I do.
please do. I'd love to
Phone
reach
numbers,
out.
email,
Oh,
anything. Yeah.
wonderful. Thank
And
you.
if you get a copy of the anthology, I think we have 6 or 7 poems by her. She's the one with the largest number of poems in the anthology because of this. And 2 of the works there address the issue of what happened to her Shabbat.
Well, it's a very intimate voice. And I, I will tell her when I reach out to her that I feel that I kind of already know her because she shared. It's a very vulnerable poem. Thank you.
It is. It is. Are we daring to do one more or just open for a general conversation? It's your time scheme. Let me know how
Let's
you'd
do
like.
one more and then open up for
Okay,
conversation.
בסדר גמור.
Thank you.
I'd love to do that. Okay, so again, an experience as an educator and then part of the team of translators, so a story. The disaster happened on Simchat Torah. And whether we were in shock and unable to find words and not knowing if we were coming or going, sleeping or having nightmares, the calendar moves on. And our poets, who are Jewish poets, also live with the calendar, with the Parashot Shavua. And once we are done with Bereshit, which we have started that day, comes the next book as saying next chapter. And on the eve of Parashat Shemot, which you recognize from the text, no need for us to read, is the first chapter, first verses of the book of Exodus, Shemot in Ivrit. And I started with this poem, noticing the phenomenon of poets writing to the Jewish calendar. What happened with the different weekly portions, what happens around Hanukkah, what happens around Tu B'Shvat, how is Seder different now, and so on and so forth. So our poet here, Yael Lifshitz, is taking the first verses of the book of Exodus. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, and she is now creating the new one. And here goes. These are the names now. ואלה שמות בני ישראל 86 לילות. And these are the names of the children of Israel, 80 and another 6 nights. You can pinpoint exactly, it was the eve of Shemot and it was the 86th day of captivity. And these are the names of those covered by darkness, and these are the names of those descending to the abyss of grief, whose life were abducted and cut from their life. And these are the names of the children of Israel who cry, whose cry rises from the depth of the tunnels of darkness. And there is no angel, no seraph to say them. Ani velo malach, Seder will come soon, you know. I am not a seraph. Not even a single expression of deliverance. I'll speak to that in a moment. But there is hope with trembling wings, with the power to break out of the straits and call them by their names and draw them out to bring them back to the land of the living. Can you see how she hopes that it will be resolved by Pesach, by the Seder? Okay, and let me speak to the issue and not one tongue of deliverance. Can you see? And even a single expression of deliverance they don't have. This refers to a midrash, and the Lord took us out, not through an angel and not through a seraph. That's from the Passover Haggadah. And now we come to Rashi. There are 4 different terms used by God in describing the deliverance from Egypt. For it states in Exodus 6:6, and I will bring forth, and I shall deliver, and I shall redeem, and I shall take out. Hotzeti, hitzalti, ga'alti, lakachti. None of them, not one. Can you hear the disappointment, the anger at the divine? Where are you? Not one single expression of deliverance. And then the hope, fragile as it is, recalling the magic of Passover. The word for straits is similar than to the word of Egypt in the first line, and to draw them out like Moses at the time. And none of that will happen, and none of that will transpire. And we are on day 324 today, and they're still there.
So my friends, this is an opportunity for us to now enter into conversation as we've let the words of poetry as shared and elucidated by our wonderful teacher, Rachel Korazim, to enter us. How are we responding to them? How are these words powerful and even transformative for us? How do you react to them? What do they call up for you? Or what would you like to know about them that would help deepen your understanding? This is your chance. So I'm going to change to gallery view. And if you choose to unmute yourself, please just say, hi, I'm Sherry, or hi, I'm Nancy. Or, I'm not, I'm Jonathan. And just pipe up. Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry. Hi. First of all, thank you so very much. It's for me, heartfelt way to begin my journey to the High Holy Days. But also, this has provoked so much pain And almost I'm reading the poetry and I'm saying, you're trying not to think about all of this and you're trying to do everything you have to do, but it's always still there. And it's not only the pain of October 7th. It brings up so much pain of the Holocaust and the anti-Semitism and the things we've had to endure. And I just must say that every day I speak to my friends in Israel, and every day I get off the phone and weep. So I just think this was phenomenal for me. And there have been many nights where I have been up just thinking about this. And I keep bringing up the word pain and senseless and horrific and not understanding the language of this people who attacked us. So I'm hoping that this will try to make me understand a little bit more. I don't know, but thank you.
If not understand, at least have words for what you feel.
Yes, yes, I understand the words, and it was like each word, I started to cry, just like went right into my heart. And I think as a mother and a grandmother, really powerful, very powerful for me.
Thank you. Anybody?
I think that many people have, come to me, particularly as I said at the beginning of class, in the last few days since this just awful weekend that showed us that just when you thought your heart couldn't be more broken, it can. And they've said, I have no words. What do I do? And I'm just so grateful that not everybody has no words, that there are poets, there are artists who understand that we still need words.
Yeah.
To help us metabolize what we're all going through together. Yoel, that might be your microphone that's causing a little feedback. Do you have a comment here?
Yes.
I'm gonna hang on.
I don't know if this is working. Okay, I'm on two computers at once, so let me try.
I was gonna say there's a second device that's causing the feedback.
I was going to suggest that. Yeah, turn off one.
In the meantime, George, you're muted, but maybe you have a comment. I hear you. I see you speaking. No, you're just chatting with somebody. You're saying hi to Barbara.
So we're using the computer that works.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So in all these difficult days and months, people used to ask me, how are you doing? How do you feel? And I would look at them strangely, what the hell do you think I'm feeling? I've lost so many friends, and the pain is so great. And I also don't sleep at night and have all these nightmares and dreams like the bullets approaching. And I just want to thank you and Rachel, because poetry is a way of expressing to people how I do feel, but I haven't had the strength to put it in words. So I thank all the poets for what they've been doing, especially the first two. I think they described so much of what I've been through in the last 342 days. And whether it's sleepless nights or trying to deal with a language I don't understand, the same as you did, Jonathan, of the people who were friends, who are on the left, who in the way they speak, the shock of listening to them and of not knowing where they're coming from, and their moral and intellectual bankruptcy in condemning Israel, even though I condemn Israel for a lot of things about the war, of course, and of the prime minister's behavior, and just sabotaging all agreements to bring home the hostages and my nephew. I'm still have trouble with their language. And so I think that the poem about language was really resonating for me. And it gives me a way of sharing my feelings with people in words that are better than I could express.
Yoel, may I comment on this? I don't know if you were here from the beginning of the session when I mentioned the anthology that we just published, and the anthology actually comes with 59 poems written since October 7th, and it's structured in 7 different chapters. One of them is language, where we collected poems that address the issue of the failure of language. So if you can afford, I highly recommend that you get yourself a copy of the anthology called Shiva. It's available on Amazon, and I trust you will find a few more poems that will speak exactly to that, what is happening to language these days.
Yes, I will definitely look at it. And I remember your earlier session and the earlier poems we discussed and how important they were also.
Thank you.
You don't know me, but I think I said in the first session, I spent 25 years on Kibbutz Be'eri, so
Yeah, I think I remember
must
that.
be great.
Yes.
The people that you've lost.
Mm.
I want to advise as well for those who are part of the Westchester Reformed Temple community, and even if not, if you live locally enough, this is not about being a member of the temple. All are welcome. On the day of October 7th, which is a Monday, from I think 9 in the morning until 7 in the evening, we're going to leave the sanctuary open. And in fact, we're going to leave the Aron HaKodesh open. The open ark will be an invitation for you to approach and pour out what you need to from your heart, even including standing at the ark if that is your way of praying. And we will have copies of the anthology available for those who just wish to sit in the sanctuary and read. So we're going to be rolling that out, and there will be clergy present, but not leading services. There's a community-wide vigil at Temple Israel Center in White Plains on Sunday evening, October 6th. So Erev Shiva October, 7:30 p.m. on October 6th. And then there is an additional long-form commemoration that will take place as our service on the afternoon of Yom Kippurim. And we'll be reaching out to you, Yoel, with an invitation to share a few brief remarks at that service as well. We're just we're we're scrambling to put everything together. Any other reflections, questions, other comments before we conclude at 10:30 this morning? Please allow me then to just say a very heartfelt Toda Rabbah to you, Rachel. We will continue to look forward to opportunities to learn with you and from you.
Thank you.
And to our community, we will wish you a Chodesh Tov. May this month of Elul live up to the way in which the rabbis understood it, which is that there's a secret meaning to Elul. We heard a couple of words from the Song of Songs, which Rachel said can be an invitation to read either the greatest erotic poem ever composed in the Hebrew language or an extended allegory about divine love that flows between the Jewish people and the Holy One of Blessing. The rabbis observed that the Hebrew month of Elul is a coded play at acknowledging that divine love that flows particularly effusively at this time of year, because Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, which spells Elul, also is an acronym for Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, words that are the framing language at the top of countless ketubot, wedding covenants. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. My highest prayer for this month of Elul is that the words of our tradition, both ancient and, as we've seen, very, very recent, will be a conduit to express love, and that we might be able to transform our suffering and trauma into allowing us to become vessels of greater empathy and greater love. So that's my prayer.
And Jonathan, if you want the address of the publishing company to get copies, a larger number of copies,
We do.
through a bulk order, I will email it to you directly.
Bakasha.
Okay.
Thank
Toda
you.
rabba. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And indeed, a good month of Elul. Thank you so much for having me amongst you.
Chodesh
Bye.
Tov. Thank you, everyone.
Chodesh Tov.
Bye.